Hey guys, it's me, it's Yoshi here again. Oh, it's so great to be here. So, I see that we have Thanksgiving coming up soon, so I just want to let you guys know that I am super thankful that I'm able to be here, to be able to just teach you guys a wonderful lesson and just to be here to, kind of talk to you guys even though I can't see you. So, but anyways, I hope you guys are getting ready for Thanksgiving coming up soon and just be able to enjoy some time with family and all that. So we're going to get started with the story that I have for you guys today. So today we're going to be talking about keeping promises. Alright, and that's super important because promises are really important. Now, if you guys know what promise is, right? It's something where you tell someone that I will do this. Alright, if you do this or something like that, it's a promise. And that's super important because that's a big word, and if you tell someone you promise to do it, it's really important you do it. Because if you don't, it can really break that. There's another person that we know that makes promises to us. And do you know who that is? I would say God. He has made so many promises to us, and that's super important because we have to understand that promises are important, and he made a promise. Like, for example, you know how we see the rainbow after it rains? That's a promise from God to never flood the earth again. That's really cool, and it shows a rainbow. It's a reminder. It's a promise, right? So we're going to talk about that. Now, I know you guys have been made many promises before, right? I have too, of course. Now, I do have a story to tell you. When I was little, my family and I, we have a cabin in Canada, and we would go up there every summer. And every summer after we left, me and my brothers, I had two older brothers, we would always stop at this really cool store with cool souvenirs, cool t-shirts, toys. It was awesome. It was a big store, and it was like a souvenir type of store. It was really cool, and we would always stop there and go shopping, and they had this big teepee outside of the store. And my mom loves to take pictures of everything, kind of like making memories, and she would put it in scrapbooks, all that. Well, she would always make my brothers and I take pictures at the teepee, and that was cool when we were younger. But when we got older, it got so tiring. You know, when you get to your older, someday when you guys get older, you'll understand. Or even if sometimes when your parents are like, oh, let's do this, and you're like, oh, I don't wanna, right? But as we got older, my parents had to realize that they had to make promises like, I promise I'll buy you a toy, I promise I'll get you ice cream if you take the picture at the teepee. And you're like, fine, I'll do it, right? That was me. I was that kind of child. Like, if you give me ice cream, I'll do what you want, okay? You remember that, guys. I like ice cream a lot. And toys, too. Whatever that. Yeah. So, my parents ended up having to make promises to us just so that we could have a picture at the TP. And my brothers didn't like it either. When I was younger, I loved it. But when I got older, I got tiring, too. You know? Always taking a picture. Well, that's kind of like what we're going to talk about. Is, how my parents made a promise to me. And if they made the promise, I got a reward for it. Even if I complained and grumbled about it, right? So we're going to talk about Abraham and Sarah. Now, if you guys remember last week, Anna talked about Abraham. So we're going to talk about Abraham and Sarah. This story is actually in Genesis 17, I believe. Yeah, Genesis 17 and 18. And it's about Abraham and Sarah. They had to pick up and leave a place that they called their home, a place that was their family and friends. They had to pick up and leave and go where God called them. Now, they could have chose to stay and be comfortable, ignore him, but the one thing was God promised them that they would have a child. Now, that's a big promise, right? And they wanted to have kids. Now, Abraham at the time was 75 years old, so he's already old, and having a kid that age is really extreme. So God told him that I would like you to move to a different land. They moved to a different land. It was just kind of hard. Well, when they got there, they had to wait a long time before they could have a child because God still made that promise, but they just couldn't have a child yet. And that was hard for Sarah because she wanted to have a lot of kids. You know, she wanted to have kids and grow old and all that stuff. But she was already getting old. Well, by the time they got to 99 years old, that's almost 100 years old, guys. That's like really old. Now, do you know anyone 100 years old? I don't, you know. It's pretty old, you know. So, pretty much, they were 100 years old, and God called to Abraham and said, hey, you were going to have a child next year. And, you know, that's super exciting, but that's like, I'm already old. I already got gray hair. What? A child now? Well, why now? You know, that's crazy. Well, Abraham told Sarah. Now get this, guys. He told Sarah, guess what she did? She laughed. She's like, that's hilarious. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but probably not funny to laugh at God's promises, you know, because that could be rude. Well, she laughed at God's promise because she's like, I'm already 100 years old. I am not having a kid. That's just crazy. Well, she ended up having a kid. And when she had her baby, she named him Isaac. Now, like, get this, guys. This is really funny because Isaac means laughter. So, kind of like a reminder to her that how she laughed at God's promises, but yet he still kept his promise. And he was serious about his promise. So she had a baby boy named Isaac. And the reason why this promise was important is because Isaac was going to grow old. And he was going to have kids. And then his kids were going to have kids. And then his kids' were going to have kids. You know? So, continues down the line. Well, down Abraham's line was really important because one of the kids that was going to be born was going to be Jesus. And that's super important. Now, if they didn't follow that line, or if they didn't follow that promise, what would have happened? It'd be a whole different plan, right? So they still continue to follow God's promise, even though they were grumpy, grumbled. They're like, oh, are you kidding me right now? I'm already I'm already 100 years old. Come on, are you serious? You know? And that's probably what they were like, because they're like, I'm old, you know? But they still followed God's promise. Now, when Sarah laughed at God's promise, God could have been like, you laughed at my promise, I'm going to give the child to somebody else. He didn't do that. Even if we complain and grumble to our parents when they make a promise, or to God when he makes a promise, he's still going to keep that promise. He's not going to forbid you or ignore you and choose somebody else. You will still continue even if we make mistakes. And guys, we're not perfect, right? We always make mistakes. Even if we do it, God's still keeping his promise. Now, before we end here, I want you guys, if you have your Bible, if not, you can listen, is Psalms 105 verses 42. I'm going to read it, and it's a very short verse, so don't worry. It says, for he remembered his holy promise, and Abraham his servant. Alright, so it even says in the Bible that God remembered Abraham's promise. And Abraham wanted the child, and they did. It just wasn't the time that they wanted. And there are things we don't want, but God reminds us, actually, that, you know, he knows what's best for us. So, just to remember that when your parents make you a promise, just kind of say, okay, you made a promise. Let's be serious about this, all right? But also be serious when God makes a promise to you guys, okay? Is that he's always keeping his promise. He will never forbid his promise. He will never break his promise. And that's what's really cool about him, all right? So always remember that. And always remember Abraham and Sarah. They waited a long time to have a child. But it happened eventually. So I hope you guys had a great time understanding the story. I love this story because it talks about promises, and promises is super important. Alright, so I'm going to head on out, guys. So I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you eat as many turkeys and pumpkin pie or pumpkin rolls, anything that you have for Thanksgiving. Don't worry, eat as much as you can, okay? But don't get sick, okay? And I'll try my best too, alright? So I'll see you guys later, and I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving.